and I love, okay. Let me say I got it. Okay. And I love the fact that we have everything our name implies and more. I'm not sure exactly what more you could have than what the name implies, or how you could have everything the name implies, given that it's things and stuff. But that becomes, as you'll see, a category of store names that I've chosen to document. This shop, which isn't that fabulous a name, but it still struck me as just something weird about it, Grog and Grok, and the fact that it was Max Grog and Grok. This is what really got me. I finally started getting serious about keeping track of weird store names. So this is back in the early 1980s. This was in Santa Barbara. I think it might still be there. At least it was there a few years ago. And I have to say, I actually got a piece of fan mail for this one. Someone wrote me and said Max Groggenbrock was the brainchild of my dad. I was very pleased to see the name immortalized on the web. Not only is it weird, the Grog concept is weird, but as we'll talk about later, I have a thing, and it's not quite appropriate to say it, put it this way, but there's this other N word that always delights me when I see it in a business name or a store name. So Max Groggenbrock, and for a long time when I started collecting and publishing these names on the internet, I called it the Max Groggenbrock Hall of Fame. So this was important. So now you kind of know my odyssey. And part of it is that over time, my favorite sort of store names started sorting themselves out in a group of categories. And these are the ones that I've landed on. And I don't organize all of them that way because it doesn't really account for every possible store name. But these are some of the best. And I'll take you through some of these. Hopefully you'll enjoy them as much as I do. And I think we start with Just Stuff. And you'd be surprised when you start looking how many stores there are that specialize in stuff. So you got Stuff and Such in Elk Rapids, Michigan. Not stuff exactly, but the Scads of Things store in Mill Valley, California. Sadly, Scads of Things is for sure gone. A lot of these other stores are probably gone. I know Things and Stuff is gone, and Interesting Records, but hard to keep track, and we'll come back to that later too. But Scads of Things in Barcelona, they have Exciting Things, and if you're a soccer fan, that Messi jersey would have been exciting. In fact, it was for my daughter when we were in Barcelona, and we actually got to see Messi play back some years ago. One of my local favorites in Chicago, no longer there, is Islamic Books and Things. Not there. Donuts and Things in San Francisco, Wings and Things, which was in Albany, Georgia. And you will note, important to note, it's all good at Wings and Things. This one is the best, though. This is just Things. This was in Boscastle, Cornwall, which is a beautiful little spot in the southwest of England. But that was the best they could do. Things. I like the simplicity of it. No stuff. No end things, just things. So that's the Stuff and Things group. In some ways, the weirdest group to me is what I call the Good Enough group. And I'll return for a minute to my personal odyssey, and it's this category. It was having seen this category where I decided these place names need to be shared. And it led me to start posting them on what was then a brand new website. In 1994, I launched my own website, interestingideas.com, which I still publish. And right around 1996, I started publishing names. And it was partly because of this one, which I think is one of the all-time great, really bad business names, Adequate Electrico. I mean, what kind of marketing genius would come up with, let's name our electric company Adequate, because there's probably a huge market for electricians who are just adequate. This was about a block from my house, about a block east of my house. And then about 2 blocks west of my house was this store, which when I moved to this neighborhood in 1996, I encountered them both. Neither of them is there anymore, by the way. So decent convenience store, which is certainly a step up from gross convenience store. But again, it really struck me that some folks they don't give themselves enough credit when they choose to name their businesses. So you have gross convenience store, decent convenience store, adequate electric co. And then you have the whole okay theme. So in Philadelphia at the terminal market, you can buy some produce that is okay. In Siem Reap, Cambodia, you can get a paint job that is going to be okay. In Spain, what you really want to go for is that okay paella, because you wouldn't want to get really excellent paella in Spain. Okay, and then in Chicago and Chinatown here, you can go to a restaurant that's okay. There are some really great restaurants around the corner, but if you want okay food, you can go to the okay restaurant, or you could. I think okay restaurant is gone now. When I go to other countries, like this one is in Toledo, Spain, what I want to bring back is a typical gift, and you can be confident at this shop that's what you'll get, a typical gift of some kind. I think that's cutlery on the right. I think Toledo was famous for its knives, so those would probably qualify as typical. A little better than okay is favorable chicken. Now, favorable chicken is one of the hundreds of names. I've collected hundreds of names by this point, and it's one of the hundreds that have been contributed by others. Lots and lots of people have, over the years, sent me weird store names, which is why if there are anyone on this presentation would like to share, I would love for you to share them. So favorable chicken is in London, and it was contributed to by a former coworker of mine named Martin Stocks, who now lives in London. A lot of times people send them without photos, but Martin's always been very good about sending me photos as well. So you have favorable chicken, just eat at favorable chicken, which is also a great marketing slogan. What's really great though is next to favorable chicken, you have classy design on one side, and really one of the great names for a business, predominantly office, on the other side. That's favorable chicken to the left there with the red. It may be a little hard to see in the daytime, but you got to love a company called predominantly office. It of course raises the question of what else, are there a few other things they sell that are not involving offices? Hard to tell. I tend to doubt it. I think it's all office supply, and the name might be misleading, but they know how to really name them in London and come up with these really punchy names. So I mentioned that a lot of these names were contributed by others. And in the early years, when I started collecting these and publishing them on the web, and people started emailing me names, I really had to take them on the honor system that the names were authentic. But later on, with the advent of Google Maps and online yellow pages and Google Maps, it became possible to verify every name I received. And I have verified most of the vast majority of names people have sent me. And some of the earlier ones as well, such as Elke's Liquor Store, which you can see is in New York State. This comes close to where you wonder, were they trying to be funny when they named it? It's quite possible that they knew what they were doing. And we'll talk about that. I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But the point here is that this was a name that someone sent me very early on in like the 90s, before it was easy to look stuff up. And then eventually I was able to go on Google Maps and determine that it exists. Now, of course, a lot of these places are out of business, so Google Maps doesn't always work. But even when they're out of business, you can often do a web search and find an old record that references the store. So we know Elke's Liquor Store probably still exists, because I think I got that fairly recently. But there are a few names I've never been able to verify and have taken on faith. So you have the Lord Jesus Christ, If I Be Lifted Up, Chair Caning and Variety Store, the Muhammad's Imports and Respect for Life Fish House, the combination of Catfish and Fix in Flats, Beecher Meats, Beecher Tools and Die, Beecher Tool and Die. Unfortunately, the fact is that Beecher Meats and Beecher Tool and Die, which more than one person sent me, are apocryphal. These were allegedly from a town that wasn't far from where I grew up, but I am 99.9% certain that someone just thought these were funny, and these businesses never really existed. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It would be great if they did, but I cannot endorse that point of view. And, I've been talking a little about methodology, so let me talk a little about hair salons. The problem, this is a pretty good place. Futurama, just by the name, unfortunately, probably not related to the Matt Groening cartoon, but nice name for any business. And I particularly like the portrait of the woman. One of my interests, Brian may have been in the bio he gave, is I've been documenting hand painted signs, whatever the business is called, for many years now, which kind of combines my interest in vernacular art and roadside art. And so when I documented this, it was really for this portrait, very nicely done. But I do like the name of calling your hair salon school Beauty Academy. But when you're in the weird store name game like I'm in, beauty parlors are a little problematic because they are a gimme when it comes to clever names. There are sheer pleasures and curl up and dyes and hair ports, all over the country. It's sort of this very self-conscious cutesy camp. And you can see here, this is just in Texas, you can see the curl up and dyes. And I think when I Googled it, there was like 100 curl up and dyes of various types. So I made a decision that since I generally favor accidental lapses of taste that are what I see as true kitsch rather than intentional cuteness, I just decided that I would not track every possible hair parlor name that people contributed or I saw. It would just overwhelm this whole project. The project would become a monument to beauticians if I included all these hair parlors. So charming as swirl and curl may be, I just decided, there's only one house of 220 volt appliances, which is on Devon Avenue in Chicago. And there are a few exceptions like Futurama Beauty Academy and this one here, but generally barbershops and hair salons, I don't pay attention to. Again, when it's a weird combination, like Come and Be Blessed, Cuts Barbershop, I like that. I also like this as a kind of a nice mid-century modern building. This is in Hammond, Indiana. And this also is the segue to the odd combinations category, which is the next category that I group things in. There's a lot of odd combinations. Now, admittedly, this one is not a name, but a wonderful accident. The hardware and paint store that was in Windsor Terrace in Brooklyn many years ago. I'm sure they fixed the name, and I'm sure that hardware and paint has been gentrified out of existence in any case, because it's right on the edge of Park Slope in Brooklyn. But you got to love hardware and paint. But yeah, the sincere weird combination. So Dave Soda and Pet City, which has been in Northampton, Mass for decades. This one is a chain, the Slug and Lettuce. It's a UK chain. This one's in their Oxford, UK outlet. It just doesn't strike me as appetizing. Maybe the Brits have a different attitude towards slugs, but the idea of slugs and lettuce is just not a pretty combination. I guess it's supposed to be bad. It's probably intentionally bad. And when they were smoking pot, they probably thought it was really funny, and that's how they named their chain of stores. So you have Moo and Oink's Hydraulics Auto Repair. Again, I photographed this because it was just a weird sign with those scary animals. I think this was a place that did the hydraulics that allow you to raise and lift, in serious ways, that like lowrider type hydraulics. But what made this name extra weird is that there is a prior and much more famous Moo and Oink in Chicago, which was a butcher and grocery store that advertised heavily. Sadly, it's gone now. At least they don't have any. I think they may still have a wholesale business, but you had the hydraulics place, which somehow thought that going off the fame of Moo and Oink, the butcher would help their hydraulics business. Who knows? Maybe there was a family connection. I'm not sure. The hydraulics place is unfortunately long gone. Big Buns and Pita, which I guess isn't an odd combination. It's kind of an inevitable combination. This is on Clark Street in Chicago, not far from where I live. This one's just a bizarre one to me. This is in Manhattan, Mexican Blockheads Diner. I guess it's really Blockheads, which is a Mexican diner, but that's not how it reads to me. But it's a nice bit of neon in any case. So you got to love it for that. Chinatown in San Francisco, Sophia Choice gift shop. Another weird sort of resonance to that name. I'd hate to be the one in the gift shop having to decide which of my children is going to get a Chinatown gift. One will get one, I guess, and one won't, is the implication of that name in Chinatown. Now, this was in the early 80s, so I'm confident that no one in Reamstown, Pennsylvania noticed. But as I was driving through, I had a foul enough mind that I noticed. Being called, having your town named Reamstown is going to make you the butt of some jokes, so to speak. But parking in rear really tops it off. That sign, and I Googled, look at Street View now, sign is long gone. But it's a nice privilege sign anyways. And the addition of parking in rear really, and that's an athletic association and it's in Reamstown, really made this one a classic. And this was early for me. I mean, this was even before Things and Stuff, when I found and thought it was important to photograph Reamstown. Now, I mentioned before, I prefer not intentionally funny names. And I got to believe the folks who named Masturbate and Tackle knew exactly what they were doing. I was actually just there in South Florida this weekend, and I almost videoed a live introduction in front of Masturbate and Tackle, but it was a little out of the way. I didn't get there. But in my mind, they lose a few points for because I think there's some intentional irony. But this store's been there a long time, and you got to give them points for nerve to pull this off and stick with it all these years. And their slogan, which I think is on the side of the building, is "You can't beat our bait." Just really tasteless. Wins the prize in my mind for really tasteless store names. Although the classy folks in Laguna Beach with tight assets did a pretty good job as well. This is right on the ocean there in Laguna Beach. And standards for roadside discourse, and I've been tracking this for many years, really have fallen way down. So whether it's Shigs and Pitt in Fort Wayne, Indiana, or Mother Clucker's Chicken in Chicago, it's part of, for all the old people out there along with me, this is just part of the decline of civilization, is that people feel this is okay to name their businesses and publicize them this way. Some guys can't help, the kind of weird, odd names. So Am I Gone Funeral Home, a favorite in Buffalo, New York. What can you do? But I got to move on to the next category, which I call That's Mr. Store to You. I guess if you can't think of a better name, you just put a Mr. in front of whatever you do. Dr. Sell and Mr. Sell is still a mystery exactly what the relationship is there. That's in Chicago. Mr. Chicken sadly is gone because it's a beautiful neon, clearly of interest to our crowd, beautiful neon sign. It was in Watkins Glen, New York, but I know it's now a vacant lot. I hope someone got the sign. Mr. Check Casher, dynamic name in Phoenix City, Alabama. And then the carpet showroom in Muskegon, Michigan. I don't know if anyone on this call knows what happened to the Mr. Chicken sign. Speak up, or put it in the chat. Be curious, because it's clearly was a pretty fabulous sign. I love the fact that Mr. Chicken's holding a top hat, by the way. Nice touch. And then another category, I mentioned it before. It's probably a little questionable to use it now, but it was more innocent times when I came up with it, the N word. Fork and Cork is just a great sign. I mean, the anthropomorphic fork and drink, that was in St. Charles, Illinois. I think they're still there, but the sign is long gone. Garden of Eden, which was in Willard, Ohio. It's hard to see the one on the upper right, but if you look closer, you will see that these folks named their restaurant Salmonella's. So Salmonella's Restaurant in Kankakee, Illinois. I think I would have called it a Quality Diner or something, or the Quality Club or anything, but using my first names. maybe Samella, but not Salmonella. And then Mike Schrank's Smoke and Gun in Waukegan, Illinois. But, I just, anytime anyone uses, an N like this in their business, they have my respect. I also tried to name not just, I tried to find as many good signs as I could. And this is a very nondescript sign, but it's kind of a classic sign from mid-century. But I like it, but it's a great name, Covert Motel, very appropriate to the business. This sign actually made it into, for you old timers out there, if you ever read True Facts in the National Lampoon many years ago, this sign actually made it into True Facts. We were very proud because this is from where I went to junior high in Madison, Illinois, but a perfectly modest little motel sign. I don't think I ever thought to photograph the Covert Motel, which is kind of a colonial style motel, but for the people in the south suburbs of Chicago, it's where you went, I guess, when you wanted to be covert about it. Obviously I like understatement in store names. So About Liquors, this is in Indianapolis, sort of a paragon of understatement, but of course a really nice building as well, undoubtedly converted from a gas station at some point. But I love the colors, I love the Coke machine, and I love the name. It all comes together. Gasaroo in Hammond, Indiana. You got to give credit to people who can get that excited about gas. I like this picture. Again, it's sort of a nondescript sign, but I in the early days when I used to take these kind of pictures and post them on my website, whether they were weird names or just cool signs, I had a tendency to want to Photoshop out extraneous material, but I love the wires and the poles and stuff. And it gives you a flavor of what that part of Hammond, Indiana is like, because it's pretty much like that. Pretty industrial and pretty grim. Anyways, here's a great example of hand painted signs, which I said is a genre I collect, but a really nice name, Gleaming Barcus in San Mateo, California. Just a weird thing to call your business. But I guess that's the idea. I never thought of Glass Box as being particularly regal, but if you're in Niles, Illinois, you can go to the Imperial House of Glass Blocks. Another one where I think it's a nice sign. I mean, it has, a very mid-century, even though it's one of those plastic signs, the typography and the little decorative elements are very mid-century, as is Niles, Illinois in many places. The House of Bottles, this is in Rockford, Illinois. Sorry, I don't have a night shot with the neon lit. I hope they light the neon still at House of Bottles. Someday I'll be there in the evening and I'll get a picture of that. But a nice mid-century building and obviously a really impressive sign for House of Bottles. Smashy Car Wash. It would be better if it were smashy, detailing would make it even more pointed. But this is a great building. Chicago has a number of these really, really great buildings with these beautiful terracotta decorations. This building is in my neighborhood. Unfortunately, it is for sale, and there's real fear that it's going to be lost, torn down for something else. There was a building not far from this one that had a very similar, there was an old theater, and it had a very similar figure at the top of the building, and someone bought the building and they decided they were going to renovate it. And the first thing they did is they had a workman not just remove that figure, but smash it intentionally for no good reason. I mean, they thought it was just ugly, and so they just threw it away. And in that case, it was too late, but it got a fair amount of attention. And in fact, they had done the work without a permit. So I think they're going to pay a price for that, doing that, but unfortunate. But anyway, Smashy Car Wash, nice name, cool building, in danger. This is Slush Yo Mouth in Wauchula, Florida. Beautiful hand painted sign. There's another version of that sign, and it's in this classic Florida building. This store is gone, although someone, I think the person who owns it still has a little business. I think they have a truck and they go around and they call their business Slush Your Mouth. But good name, great sign. I like this pair in particular. So you have Shanghai Deluxe. These are both in Chinatown. And I think around the corner is the new Shanghai Deluxe restaurant. So presumably there's a connection there, but new Shanghai Deluxe. Just some nice signs. I mean, I think you will appreciate, and some decent names. You Pump It, very fetching name. This is in Longmont, Colorado. I think there's a few You Pump It's out there. Stop Sock, not Stop and Sock or Stop and Sock, just Stop Sock. Beautiful sign, obviously. I am certain this is long gone. I think this is in Waukegan, Illinois, although sometimes I think it's on US 20 between, which we talked about last time, between Springfield, Mass. And Boston on the old Boston Post Road. I'm just not sure. I took this picture so long ago and I never wrote down where it was. But in one of those two places, they had Stop Sock and a really great sign. And I just love this building. It's a great, vintage building and parkade, which, someone really loved parking to come up with let's call our building the Parkade. I thought it was impressive, but I think it's a great building and prominent in Spokane, Washington. I mean, that's a large sign with a sort of a strange, silly name on it. Who doesn't love any store that uses the happy face and, happy foods? This is in Chicago. The Enjoy Wine and Dine, which is also in Chicago, another nice sign. And, those of you who are from the Midwest all have to love Come and Go. There are other variants on this one, but Come and Go is a pretty widely known chain in the Midwest. I think it's a nice picture. I mean, it's one of those buildings that we see when you're on the road, you see all the time and you take for granted. And 20 or 30 years from now, people will be loving this kind of building because they'll be gone. They will have all been either remodeled or torn down for some reason. Another in the Come and Go family is the Stop and Gas in Lockport, New York. Another beautiful building. And then, and we're getting towards the end here, so I grouped some favorites. And the point here is that unfortunately, nice names like nice signs don't last. In fact, we all know if you appreciate businesses and beautiful signs, that even if they're not destroyed, they wear out. So all these places are gone. Standee's Coffee Shop is the meaning of that name is it was right next to the L station in Chicago. So it was for Standee's on the L. National Liquor Bar, which I think is where you all went to get your liquor. This was in Milwaukee. It was actually on National Avenue in Milwaukee. Al's Fun in the Bun, great sign. There's still a sign like this at Wolfie's, which was a little further north, but Al's Fun in the Bun is gone. Sexy Sex Lounge, which is at 66 and Western Avenue in Chicago. Love the name, love, the modest little neon because of the name. And of course, beautiful building, beautiful Art Deco building there. And it's been remodeled and none of that. There's still a bar there, but the name has changed and the deco stuff is gone. And then, of course, you can never forget the Bates Motel. This one in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, which I think is still a motel, but I do not believe it's still the Bates Motel. Probably good. But the good thing about business names, unlike vintage signs, which when they're gone, they're gone, they're always weird new business names to discover. So you have Fancy Pencil Land in Niles, Illinois, which is it's in an H Mart for those of you who are lucky enough to live in a place that have H Marts. These are these massive Korean supermarkets with really great Asian food, but this one has a Fancy Pencil Land. Then you got sacrificial lamb kebabs and wrap sandwiches, which just doesn't seem appropriate. And I gotta say, I didn't see this one. My daughter, who now lives in Washington, D.C., is now looking out for me and has been sending me good names for a while. So she actually found this one, the Sacrificial Lamb. Supposedly it has very good naan at Sacrificial Lamb, but I don't know if she's tried it yet or not. My nephew, so it's a family affair. My nephew sent me this one. As I said, I avoid documenting hair salons, but there's something really aggressive about the name "I'll Cut You" that I thought cut through the sort of normal cuteness of hair salon names. This one I think is in New Hampshire. And then, Mike Hirsch isn't on the call, but he sent me this one with the comment, "You can't tell me there's a better hardware store around." This one's in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. There's also, he first sent me the "Can't Tell Me Long" funeral, which I believe is no longer in the "Can't Tell Me" family. But the hardware store, this is a fresh photo he just sent me. So Can't Tell Me family is still around there. I shouldn't make fun of people's family names, the Can't Tell Me's and the Amigons, but hey, I got a weird name. I used to be called Swiss cheese all the time, so I feel it. Anyways, if you enjoyed these, I do have a book that I published a while back called Bizarre Bizarres that collects, most of the names you just saw. There's a few new ones that didn't make it into the book, and it's a lovely book. You can order it at my website, interestingideas.com. You can also order the other book that I just published called Lakefront Anonymous, which I'll just a very quick pitch, which is about stone carvings along Chicago. Has 26 miles of lakefront, and along much of that lakefront, people since the 1920s have been carving in rocks that were put along the lake to protect the shoreline. A lot of them have disappeared and been destroyed, but there's still several thousand of these rock carvings that range from people's initials to really elaborate mythological scenes and portraits and pictures of animals and just all kinds of interesting stuff. So anyways, is very little known in Chicago. In fact, almost unknown until now. But with a friend who first told me about them many, many years ago, we've been documenting them, and we finally put out a book that shows them. So if you're interested, you can go to interestingideas.com. There's a ton of other stuff there. You can just bounce around, and if you like hand painted road signs, I've got hundreds or thousands on the site. It is Euros, not gyros or gyros. It's technically Euros. I have several hundred Euro signs on the website, but all kinds of other hand painted signs. I'm not so big on neon. I know neon's near and dear to people in the SCA. I go more for the hand painted signs, although I like a good neon sign. But with that, I guess I'll take a look and see what's in the chat. I might show a few other things since we're a little early. I'll just run through a few final ones, which I threw in at the end in case I had extra time. So Blenders in the Grass in Santa Barbara. You old timers will remember Splendor in the Grass, which was I think that was Warren Beatty movie in one of his early movies. Butts and Ashes Tobacco Outlet, which I think is in West Virginia. That's I mentioned Wildly Upbeat. Oh no, I didn't. Wildly Upbeat Printers in London. That's Martin Stocks taking the picture who I mentioned, who also sent me predominantly Office. He sent me Wildly Upbeat Printers. Stop Every Day, which is like stop every day. I think we'd all like to stop the days. Lucky Pork Store in the Mission in San Francisco. I think by definition, pigs there are not lucky. In the stuff department, Hayward, Wisconsin, you got Packer stuff and lots of teas, Stuff-A-Bear and stuff. Also flowers and things. There may even be another stuff one that I didn't get, but they're big on their stuff and things there. Birmingham, Alabama has Sticks and Stuff, which again, I love the ones that combine my categories. And then finally, in Chicago, Shining Bikes and Things. So anyways, that exhausts what's in the presentation. I'm just looking at the chat. I see there may be a few contributions.
There's one question that came in the chat, and that was from Philip Langdon. He says, on US 6 in north central Pennsylvania, there's a roadside restaurant and bar called the Permastone Inn. and it's clad in permastone. Have you found other restaurants or stores named for their building materials?
No, you know, not offhand, although I'm sure you could find a few brick ovens here and there. But permastone, I mean, that's a good one, right? I mean, that's like the cinder block inn or something. But I'll have to keep my eyes open for those.
Okay.
You know, someone, you know, there's, yeah, store name recall, fun stuff. Yeah, strange drugs. And there's a picture, I look forward, and stoner drugs. There actually used to be a drugstore in Chicago, which I did not photograph, called, or maybe it was, no, it wasn't, it was somewhere else, but it was called Skaggs Drugs, which for those of you who are up on the drug culture language, that's a good one. And there, I mean, in Chicago, there was a store called Cosmopolitan Drugs, which had their art was a woman like jumping in the air and saying, you know, and like just joyous because she got her drugs at Cosmopolitan Drugs. Yeah, harsh. Yeah, these are good ones. The drug ones are very good.
We have a question, Bill, at the bottom, and maybe actually a couple of questions. So first of all, I've muted everyone, but please feel free to unmute and ask a question. We have a question from Julie Taylor. She says, how do you feel about stores that are just blank, the just X, and X-O-Rama?
So absolutely, you know, the just, you know, that's why my category is called Just Things. And I have a few of the just stores. I think that's one of the classic categories. And I'm sure many of you saw the David Letterman bit, one of his most popular bits, when he goes to Just Bulbs and keeps asking them what else they sell. I think it was Just Bulbs, wasn't it? It was something like that. But yeah, the Just and the Orama. There's I think in the book I may even have a picture of a bus, a tour bus company in Europe called Scanorama, which was a Swedish bus company. But yeah, Oramas are really good. Yeah, I noticed that there's this discussion about, well, adequate to get placement early in the yellow pages, which I think is certainly a point well taken. However, if they were serious about it, it would have been adequate, not just adequate. So I'm not totally convinced that that's why they use that name. It got them up to the top, but I can guarantee you that in Chicago, there probably still is a AAA electrical company that would beat adequate any day of the week. So yeah. So, you know, fuck coffee, you know, there is a course, and I think in my master list and in the book and on my website, you know, there of course, it's sort of almost like the hair salons. There are some Asian restaurants that have variations on fuck, in, you know, or names that are similar enough, you know, or the, you know, that some of the people have said in like Hung Farlow and, you know, a few others where, you know, those are kind of easy pickings, but, you know, I do include them in the list because they still are a little bit funny.
Bill,
yeah, Ho Hum Hotel. There is the S&M.
Well, Bill, just
Pardon me?
we have a question from Stephanie Stuckey here too.
Yeah.
Who asks, how do we send photos to you for inclusion on your site? Do you have an Instagram account or hashtag so we can post places?
So I have an Instagram account on which every few days I post one of these store names that I did today. I posted Mr. Chicken today, partly to promote this talk tonight. Of course, you can't, it's hard. So you can always, you can message me at Instagram. You can also just email me. You can go to interestingideas.com, email me at bill@interestingideas.com. There's actually a page on interestingideas.com that let you upload store names. But the easiest way is probably to email me or to you know, or go on Facebook. You can follow me on Facebook. I mean, as I say, I post store names every few days on both Instagram and Facebook. I think Stephanie might even follow me on Instagram, so it wouldn't be hard for her to find me and DM me there. I think it's at BILSW. Yeah, Gags, it's a great name. Sorry, Gags.
What is
Pardon me?
What is your email
Bill
address?
you can email me at bill@swislow.com or bill@interestingideas.com.
Okay.
No, I was going to say Gags is a really great name for a restaurant. You know, as is Upchuck for, UP. I mean, again, some cases they obviously are trying to be funny, but even though I prefer unintentional humor, because I'm a snob like that, I'll give people credit when it's actually funny or when they have the nerve, when it takes real nerve to use a name like calling your restaurant Upchuck. Yeah, and there are ones, that are famously funny like that. So in Salem, Mass, there is a store that I've seen other people reference it called the Bunghole Liquors, which, is been good for a laugh for many, many, many years. So, again, like I say, I will give, I'll give credit where credit is due. Ella and Sam instead of Salmonella would have solved the problem. Yeah.
So everybody else that's on the call, please feel free to unmute yourself if you have any comments or questions you'd like to address directly to Bill. So just click the unmute button and go ahead if anybody wants to contribute. We have had a lot of calls, a lot of messages come through, Bill, which I've saved the messages, so I'll send them to you. But lots of good examples, and also lots of very strong compliments on your presentation.
Well, thank you.
Really
Well, I gotta say, Barbara Gossett, what I was trying to think of that was what the pho. That was one that someone had sent in the past, and I was trying to reach for that name, and when I was mentioning the Asian restaurants, but yeah, what the pho is. I mean, how could you not name your restaurant that?
Really?
Yeah.
I think it's gone now.
I think there are others though. In fact, I think I might have a picture of one that was in near Seattle, because I think it's such a clearly great name that it's been used more than once.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments or questions for Bill? It's a top-notch show. Absolutely. The most entertaining thing I've seen all month.
I guess I'll comment on carvings that Stephanie Stuckey asked about, because it's easy to get me going on that. As I say, I think the book is going to be reviewed. I didn't mention this. I think the book is going to be reviewed in the next SCA journal. I hope, at least I'm hoping. Doug indicated it might be. I have this longstanding interest in art by ordinary people, and particularly art by people who didn't think they were artists, at least when they started making art. And so these carvings are made by people who are just hanging out on Chicago's lakefront. Chicago is unusual in that almost its entire lakefront, from very early on in the city's history, has been kept open as parkland for the public, rather than being developed with piers and railroads and warehouses that you find or used to find in most cities. Other places have gotten more like us, but Chicago has had this lakefront where people could go and have access to the lakefront for miles and miles for more than 100 years. But all of Chicago's shoreline is landfill. Almost none of it is natural. So erosion is a huge issue. So in the 20s, they started putting these big quarry stones, like 8-foot wide, 4-ton quarried limestone blocks lining the lakefront. And they'd be they're like step stones, like 3 tiers of these blocks, sometimes 4 or 5 going down to the water from the park. And that's where people hung out. And, people would carve. They would, if they might carve just an initials with their keys or something. But people would go out with hammers and chisels and carve hearts with names in them, carve what I call bathing beauties. There's a lot of nudes, carvings of naked ladies, a few phalluses, penises as well. But portraits, there's Lincolns and there's Kennedys and there's all kinds of animals and beautiful carvings about maybe, as I say, and there are thousands. I photographed all the ones I could find, walking from basically not walking the whole way, but going from the Indiana state line about 22 miles north, every place on the lake that has these limestone blocks. And there are thousands. Thousands have been destroyed because in the 2000s, the Army Corps of Engineers got rid of about half of these old blocks and replaced it with concrete and steel. but there are all these carvings and they're just randomly there, and people don't notice them because they're down. They're down on the rocks, and people aren't looking down, they're looking out at the lake. So anyways, that's my interest. Anyone who wants to hear more about that, I can tell you all about it. There's also lots of information on my website about these carvings at interestingideas.com, or you can buy the book as well. Oh,
Bill, let me just say, I'm Joe Marlin. I live in Chicago near the lakefront, and Doug Town is the fellow who asked me to review your book. So I don't want you to get worried, because I do think it's coming out in the next issue, but I'm not sure. He said it's a matter of spacing and whether he could fit it in and that kind of thing.
Fine.
But I don't want you to be worried, because it is a very positive review, so don't get worried about it.
Cool, thank you. Have you seen the carvings? Have you gone out and looked at them? Have you noticed them?
Well, I'm not going to get out in the winter in the cold weather, and I don't do too well walking around in uneven, where the footing is uneven, because I'm up in years a little bit. So, but
Yeah, me too.
But,
Hey, my advice is
I enjoyed the book very much.
go to Foster Avenue Beach. You know, I got to tell you, I'm in my 60s and I'm climbing on some of these rocks that have been like overturned by the lake.